Okie dokes. So here we are at part two of this discussion of interpretation. There are then two chronologies that occur in any narrative. Often there are more, okay? But I mean, basically, just we're keeping it simple here, and we're just going to, So the two chronologies are as follows. I will get myself out of the way. There is the order in which events occur in the narrative, okay? So there's the internal order that happens, and sometimes in a narrative that happens in a linear fashion. You start at A, and the person's 4 years old, and then they get to be 90 years old, and then they die, and that's it. It's all internal. It's all chronological. Then there's the order in which we read the events in the novel, external time. What if you take a novel and the first thing that we read as readers, is about a person's day in their life when they're 25, and then we read about a day in their life when they're 40. And the novelist says, but they didn't know yet that what would happen to them when they were 60 was, and you're like, oh, jeez. So the novelist or storyteller, because it can be a short story, it could be a poem, shows you clips from this time, and then it's earlier, and then it's later. So there's time, the times are sort of jumbled, and your job is to slowly put this stuff together. So internal time is the internal chronological sequence. External time is the sequence in which we read things. So what's the first thing you read? The first thing you read isn't necessarily the first thing that happens, right? Because let's say the first thing you read is the person's on their deathbed, and they say, and this is a very common structure where especially for, say, a Hollywood thriller, and we catch up with our hero, and they're in a perilous situation. It looks like they're about to be killed or fried or whatever it is. It's over for them, and they're like, and there's a little freeze frame, and it says 3 days earlier, and you're going, So you started 3 days into the narrative, and we're like, what? Oh, okay. And we start with the story. You're like, okay. And then at a certain point, you're like, oh, I see how this is going to become where I started. Then you get to where you start like, this is where we came in, and now this is how the story works out. Okay. So that's a very basic structure, which you're familiar with. And some people absolutely hate this. They want a narrative that just starts at A and goes through B, C, D, and arrives at D, and that's it. They don't want any please, no fussing. They don't want to be screwed with. Okay, fair enough. The basic tools that we can use to, or sharpen, because you already have a bunch of tools to untangle stories, is we can pay attention to these two kinds of chronology. O'Brien knows that humans can be logical and can be trained to be logical. We can all, and you have been already. I mean, you have been taught, we have all been taught to read in sequence, to believe in linear time, to organize things chronologically. It is still the most basic way to organize a narrative. Somebody will say, you come in to tell somebody a story, which has been upsetting, and you say, well, this happened and then that, and they're like, stop, can you slow down? Can you tell me from the beginning what happened? You're like, okay, well, 4 days ago, you remember this person, right? So there's a cause that you want for the story. That is, there's a reason that you're telling the story. It might be funny. It might be you need advice. You're upset. Who knows? Or maybe you just need to tell the story, right? Or maybe you need to tell it again. Or maybe you're trying to figure out, who knows, right? There's all kinds of reasons to tell the story. So Norman Bowker, in Speaking of Courage, remembers that he and his dead friend Max spent time, he says, talking about urgent matters, worrying about the existence of God and theories of causation. Then there had not been a war, but there had always been the lake, which was the town's first cause of existence on 132. Now, this is one of these really, this is where O'Brien is so smart, because he's talking about cause and effect, that this brings about that. But he's looking back to a time when Norman is a child, and he has this childhood friend, Max. And they're talking the way children or teens do about how do things happen. Well, we all talk about that, actually. It's not just teens who are concerned about, how do we come into existence and why are we here, and all of these sort of basic, existential questions which keep you awake at 3 a.m. So, what is it? These are theories of causation. What made this happen? How come this particular series of events happened that way? And we look back, we spend enormous amounts of time looking back to see why, as Kurt Vonnegut would say, why was a moment formed in the particular way that it was formed? And so the lake is the town's causation. Basically, it's the first moment of the town's causation. In other words, because there's a lake, people come to the shores of the lake and they're like, oh, good, water. We need water to survive. And they begin building a settlement on the shores of the lake. And after a while, there's a town there. And so that the water, the lake, is the cause of the town. Oops, pardon me. I am the cause of, my chair is the cause of not supporting me. So O'Brien uses this kind of talk to talk about things we are interested in, which is what happened and why did people do what they did? So what caused people to do what they did? Those are big questions. So that's why it can be handy to start off with these two kinds of time. Right? And so now that's enough of that.